Hi, this is Alex, and if you love music and love albums, you're at the right place because we're all about albums. So, first we have to define what an album is. To me, an album is a collection of thoughts or music by an artist that are put together and presented to you at one time for your enjoyment. Now, I want to get something clear. Albums do not mean this. They do not mean vinyl. They can be vinyl, sure, an album could be vinyl, but there are other forms of albums. You can have a CD, you can have an MP3, you can even have downloads, you can have Blu-rays, and today a lot of people doing their streaming. That could be an album too. Now, albums are meant to be played from start to finish and in the sequence that the artist presented. Why? Well, the artist many times picks how the sequence should go by setting a mood, delivering a message. Sometimes the song shows also progression and maturity in the person, the artist, and draws a conclusion or a resolution towards the end and sends a message. So I think it's important to listen to an album from start to finish. Now, I do not want to discuss sound quality. I know that's what's on your mind. I'm not going to deal with that topic because it opens up a whole can of worms, and I don't want to go there. We're going to talk about music, the album, in all its formats. But I do believe vinyl is best for album listening. And why is that? When you listen to vinyl, you have to decide what you want, what's on your mind. You go to your shelf and look through your collection and pick the one that you think you'd like to listen to. Next, you have to place the record on the turntable. Then you have to lift the tone arm and put the needle down carefully to the beginning of the album. And then what do? You sit back, relax, and listen. Now, we're lazy people. We're not going to get up and pick up the needle and put it down on the first song again, or go from the first song and then jump to the fifth song because that's the one you like the best next. No, we're lazy, so we let the album play and then we'll flip the album over and do it again. So I think album listening with vinyl is the best method, because with vinyl, you listen to the album from start to finish the way the artist intended you to listen to it. And I think that's very important for the enjoyment and understanding of what the album is presenting to you. Well, am I the right person to take you on this journey? Although I'm not in the music industry, I do have something, and that is experience. I've been collecting albums for nearly 50 years. It's a long time. And so basically I'm bringing you knowledge. For you to appreciate and grow your knowledge of albums, you need to live it. You need to spend the time. But there is a shortcut. What's that shortcut? Well, listening to other people who have some knowledge. People like me. I could be your bodhisattva. I learned that word from this album, so albums can teach you stuff as well. By the way, bodhisattva means teacher. So, where do I begin on this journey with you? Well, I thought I'd begin with my beginning. I started listening to music like most young people, which is what we had, the radio. I listened to FM radio, and I loved to listen to the station that played the 50s and 60s music. I love especially the 60s harmonies and upbeat songs. It really put a smile on my face, and I love to sing along. Now at home, I did not have any albums of my own, so I had to save up my money. And at home, in the stereo system that we had for the family, the only albums we had were my parents' albums, which were basically Broadway show tunes, which are fine, and I love them to this day, probably because I was exposed to them from an early age. But I wanted to listen to my own music, stuff that was exciting to me. I saved up some money and I went to the record store. This is my first experience. I open the door and I look in, and a smile on my face, because these are my people. There are thousands upon thousands of vinyl records in this store, and I knew I was going to have a lot of fun. There was a lot of knowledgeable salespeople. They were accessible. They wanted to talk to you. They were excited about music. This was my first time in, and I wanted to make sure that first album purchase was going to be the right one for me. And looking at what I love the most, the 60s, what's the big band of the 60s with the harmonies? Of course, it's the Beatles. So I ran over to the B section and started looking through. Lo and behold, I didn't realize this, the Beatles had a lot of records. I didn't know where to begin. I was just flipping the album covers and trying to read the songs and going this way and that way. And I kept putting them back. And I guess a salesperson must have seen my frustration and came over and said, can I help you? And I said, well, I wanted to buy a Beatles record and I love, the harmonies and stuff. So he says, well, tell me some of the songs you like. And I said, well, Yesterday, I Want to Hold Your Hand, She Loves You, I guess early Beatles stuff. So he says, I know the album for you. And I said, great, what is it? He said, the Red Album. And I looked at him, the Red Album? I heard the Beatles had a white album. Now they're going into other colors. What's the Red Album? He says, no. It's a greatest hits collection of the Beatles that encompassed the years 1963 to 1966. And I have that album right here. Here it is. This is the first album I purchased 50 years ago. Amazing. And I love this album. I played it hundreds of times. I wore out the record. Is Greatest Hits an album? Well, by my definition, not really, because greatest hits are songs that are compiled from many years that the artist had recorded. And so they're not presenting you with their thoughts and ideas and words from one time, not really a true album. But people say it's an album. So really, that's not my first purchase. So since I love the sound of the Beatles, I had happened to see a TV show. They were showing the band perform some of their hit songs live, and I thought that was really exciting. I hadn't seen that. This is well before MTV. I believe it was around 1972, 73, and the band was the Raspberries. The Raspberries, for those of you who don't know, were a band from the early 70s, had several pop hits, and they were a power pop band, and they actually carried on the tradition of the early Beatles and the early Beach Boys with the harmonies and that upbeat type sound. So that appealed to me at a young age. So I went over to the R section, and sure enough, the Raspberries were there as well. But again, I found out that they had, I believe, 3 albums at the time. So I looked at the 3 albums and it was like a no-brainer. Look at this album cover. I mean, this is a crazy album. I mean, it's unbelievable. It opens up and, the vinyl's in here. It's really crazy. And believe it or not, as a gimmick, the word raspberries was actually scented with raspberries. And 50 years later, and this is the original album from 50 years ago, it still smells like raspberries. It's really amazing. Now, for those of you who don't know, just a little tidbit, the Raspberries, a lot of the songs were written by a real talented guy, Eric Carmen, and in 1975, he went and had a solo career and had a few pretty big songs. And most of you who go to hockey games and have listened to the radio know his song. You may not know he wrote it, but he sang it, and I think it went to number 2 on the American charts. So the song was called All By Myself, very popular song. After I got my second album, obviously I ran home and I played the 2 albums incessantly and drove my parents crazy, but I loved it and I was hooked. And from then on, I saved every penny I had and I spent all my money on albums. Before I conclude this episode, I do want to discuss what I'm going to do in most of my episodes. I'm going to end the episode with a featured album. Now, the featured album will probably be related to the show I talked about. And as I told you, what an album is that the artist wants you to listen from start to finish. They're setting a mood. They want to tell you something. They want you to experience the message they want to give. They're feeling. And so I decided to pick the album to me that is meant to be played from start to finish without stopping. You have to listen to it in its entirety. It's a wonderful record. It really sets a mood. It transports you to another place. And I would say this album is perfect to listen to at night and maybe even in a darkened room. And what am I talking about? This album is, of course, Dark Side of the Moon. Dark Side of the Moon was an album by Pink Floyd, came out in 1973. And one tidbit that you may not know, this album was on the charts for longer than any other album in history. Guess how many weeks it was on the charts? You're not even going to be close. It was 950 weeks. Yes, indeed. That's 18 years on the charts. Amazing. And it's got to be on the charts for a reason. So many of you own this album. You probably haven't heard it in years. Take it out of your collection and listen to it. And for those who don't have the album, you got to run out and buy it or download it or something, because you got to be turned on to this album. It's as fresh today as it was back in 1973. I'm glad you came along on this journey. I do appreciate your time, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did like it and want to be informed and not miss any of the episodes, please click down below on the subscribe button. Also, let me know your first record, what you bought, and what you remember about it. I'd love to hear about it. Anyway, this is Alex, and I hope you enjoyed it. Good day, and keep 'em spinning.